Welcome to today's topic on immune health and resilience. Over the last few decades, allergies and asthma rates have been increasing, and also we're seeing an increase in autoimmune conditions. Alongside this, we're seeing issues with antibiotic resistance. So, although we're all living longer and we have more vaccines, we are seeing more disruption to our immune systems long term. So, it's so important that we understand how our immune systems work and how we can support them in the long term. So, that's what we're going to be discussing today. So, let's get started. So, what exactly is the immune system? So, it is actually your entire body and how that functions. So, all the time, our bodies are looking for and detecting potential threats from viruses, bacteria, um, toxins, and are clearing away any debris or unwanted or harmful um, cells and substances from our body. So it's our immune system that takes care of that. So it's our entire body and its defenses. So a lot of people might maybe have heard about white blood cells and how they are important in the immune system. That's just one tiny part of it. So it's the entire body and how it addresses those threats to it. So we're going to talk a bit more about that in detail next. So, how exactly does the immune system work? So, I'm going to go through it in a bit more detail so you can understand the whole body approach to immunity. So, first of all, we've got our skin and our mucous membranes, which are, for example, in our nasal cavity in our nose. So those are barriers to foreign substances coming into our bodies, but also they help detect when things are coming into our body, which could be potentially harmful. So, for example, if you were to cut yourself, then there are cells within your skin that would detect that there is a potential virus or bacterial pathogen that your immune system then needs to address. Then we have our bone marrow. So that's the substance that's inside each bone, the sort of fleshy part within your bone. And that's where your immune cells are created. So these are your fighter cells, if you like, that are actually there to then fight off these threats from bacteria and viruses. Then we have the thymus, which is actually a small gland that's located in the middle of your, just beneath your throat here. And it's something that is quite large in children and actually shrinks throughout the teenage years. And it's still there, but very, very small in adulthood. And that's actually where um, your immune cells get their training, if you like, to learn how to which viruses and pathogens potentially within your body to fight, which and so it can recognize those and deal with them. Then we have our lymph nodes and our vessels, which are, for example, your lymph nodes in your throat, under your arms, and then the blood vessels. So the lymph nodes is actually they filter those immune cells, and then your blood vessels will distribute them throughout the body. Then we have our spleen, and the spleen actually recycles those used immune cells, and it will store immune cells as well. So it's a repository for immune cells. So you may have heard when people have to have their spleen removed, they then have immune issues, and that's because it's a vital part of the overall immune system. And then our gut and microbiome. So this is within our stomach, our intestines, small intestines, large intestines. Um, so we actually have 70 to 80% of our immune cells reside in our gut. So that's ultimately where they end up. So if you consider about where foreign bodies or pathogens might enter your body. Generally, a lot of them is through the mouth, unless you have a cut. It's through the mouth, nose, and it goes swallowed down into the gut. So it's your gut that is your first line of defense, really, for most things. So 70-80% of your immune cells are in your gut, which is why it's so important to look after your gut. So that is the whole body immune system defense in a nutshell. So there's essentially two types of immunity. This is getting a bit technical, but I'll be very brief just to explain this. So we have something called innate immunity and something called adaptive immunity. So innate immunity is where you perhaps cut yourself and your body responds immediately. It knows what to do. You have a cut, it will fight that bacteria. And then adaptive immunity is where you've perhaps been exposed to a particular virus, a cold virus or a flu virus or something like that. It could be chickenpox. And your body takes its time to work out, oh, this is new, and then learns how to respond to it and how to fight it off. Now, the next time you are exposed to that virus, your body will have learnt and will more quickly respond. So in the case of chickenpox, that's why it's something that you can generally only get once, because your body's learnt very quickly, I've had this before, I know exactly what to do, and you don't get again. So you build up this natural immunity because it's learnt how to deal with them. So that's what we mean by adaptive immunity. So how does an immune response act? So this particular um, pathogen that has come into your body, what actually happens. So we'll take an example of perhaps a bacteria. So you've cut yourself. It enters your body, and then we have cells which are called sentinel cells, and we have those all over the body. They're in our skin, for example, that are there purely to detect when something is a foreign substance. So they're basically looking at patterns, and if it's a pattern they don't know, then it sends off an alarm signal. So it produces a chemical which sets this alarm process in place, which then signals for the body to send blood to that area. And that blood will contain the white blood cells as well. And the white blood cells are the ones that will then fight off that infection. So what you will see is that area becoming reddened, inflamed, and that is the white blood cells being sent rapidly to that area, which is why you get this temporary inflammation. And then that is then that pathogen is then fought off and destroyed, and then your body then needs to heal. So this is where your inflammation needs to come down, and any destroyed cells or remnants of those cells need to be cleaned up by the body and then ultimately healed. So that's the process of an immune response. So a similar would be if you were to get a cold, your body detects it, creates an alarm, sends an immune response, immune cells to there. It then fights it off. It can take some time sometimes to fight it off, and then your body will heal. So that's the overall process of how immunity works. So, where do vaccinations come into this, and how do they work? So we mentioned briefly about adaptive immunity and how your body learns over time. So it essentially creates a library of knowledge. So it knows, oh, I've seen that virus before, or I've seen that toxin before. I know how to deal with it, and so it can more quickly deal with it next time. So vaccines essentially are introducing a very small amount of that, usually a virus or sometimes a bacteria. And so your body, and in a very controlled way, so your body then has to learn to respond to it so that in the future, if you are then exposed to that same um, a virus, for example, then your body will very, very quickly be able to produce the right antibodies or immune cells in order to fight it off. So that's essentially how vaccinations work. Um, Years ago, we relied completely on our natural immunity and our adaptive immunity, and some things obviously are so potent then you had high mortality rates, which is why we have vaccines for certain things. We also now have vaccines for very kind of mundane things as well. And so I would say if you can rely on your natural immunity, obviously there are some groups that would, that feel that they need to have things like flu jabs and what have you. And there's chickenpox vaccines and things now. If you are planning to get pregnant and you've not had chickenpox before, then it would make sense to have a vaccine at that stage, potentially. Um, so that's how vaccinations work. And there are lots of vaccinations available, but it's not always necessary to have them all. So we've mentioned a little bit about inflammation. So is it our friend or is it our foe? Because you may hear people talking about inflammation, trying to reduce inflammation, and chronic inflammation can be bad for you. So I'm just going to explain the difference. So inflammation is actually your body's response to immune response. So it is designed to then expand the blood vessels and send more blood and therefore white blood cells in order to fight this threat off. Or it could be you've sprained your ankle and it sends, it inflames that area because it's actually fighting off and healing the injury. So acute inflammation, so very short-term inflammation due to a threat, immune threat, is good for you. It's actually a sign that your body is doing what it should be doing. The problem we have is chronic inflammation, which is long-term inflammation, and it basically switches your immune system on to I'm in threat mode all the time. And chronic inflammation can be caused by too much sugar in your diet, too much processed food, too much stress, things like that, which is why people then have issues because they are finding that they essentially in almost like an immune response all the time, which is not right. It's something that should come on and then go back to normal. Yeah, so that is something to consider. Another thing to bear in mind is when you're taking anti-inflammatories. So if, for example, you sprained your ankle and you immediately start taking anti-inflammatories, then you're almost preventing your body from doing the healing process that it needs to. So yes, there is a time for anti-inflammatories where you need to, it's that the inflammation is too great, it's too painful, those kind of things. But to completely suppress inflammation when it is there to heal you can be actually counterproductive. So it's a balance. So that is something to have a think about. So things like ibuprofen, for example, are a anti-inflammatory. You would definitely want to avoid doing that all the time that you are ill if you can, to allow your body to send through the inflammation and do the healing. Otherwise, you could potentially delay the healing process. So, what is disrupting our immunity? So, stress is a huge precursor for inflammation, and therefore it affects our immunity because it's constantly on. Sleep, so inadequate sleep is something that puts strain on the body and actually prevents the body from having its immune function efficiently. Things like processed foods, we mentioned, increase inflammation. Alcohol also puts strain on the immune system and actually um, suppresses immune cells. So sleep deprivation actually lowers antibody production, and sugar and toxins inflame tissues. So things like cigarettes actually create inflammation, other toxins. And another thing is our sedentary lifestyle now. So we are not moving as much. Now, in order for our immune system to function optimally, that we need our blood supply to be functioning optimally, and everything slows down when we sit down. So we need to be getting up more and moving more, which keeps the blood pumping well around the body and keeps everything alert and active and ready to respond. So how can we be more resilient now? So getting better sleep, making sure that you're getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep, making sure that you're getting adequate vitamins. So, the vitamins that we recommend to support your immune system are vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D, which you can get from sunlight, selenium, and omega-3. So, you can have a chat to your coach and they will be able to let you know which foods those you have those in. But for most people, we would say, especially in the winter time, in the flu season, it's great to supplement on these things to make sure that you're getting those adequately. And then a simple thing of comfort is actually really good for your immune system. So laughter, joy, comfort, connection, just your overall emotional, mental well-being really, really helps your immune system. So this obviously counteracts the stress. Then your gut health is so, so important. So we mentioned earlier that 70 to 80% of your immune cells are located in your gut. Making sure that that is a really good microbiome. You're eating lots of fiber, which is what actually feeds that gut bacteria. And if necessary, supplementing with probiotics and potentially prebiotics if you are struggling to get your fiber intake. And that just tops up your microbiome within your gut. And then making sure that you are taking time to de-stress. So we've got someone sat here meditating. It doesn't have to be meditating, but making sure that you take time out for yourself to de-stress is really important to ensure that you are reducing inflammation in the body. And going outside in nature and walking is a great one. So making sure that you are more mobile. So these are all things that sound very simple, but actually they have a very specific physiological effect on the body and are extremely powerful to do. So it is worth doing them all. So following today, have a little think about your own immune system and where you feel that you might need some support, be it in terms of perhaps you get regular colds or have allergies, or you feel run down, or maybe think that you might suffer from inflammation. So have a think about what might be relevant for you following today, and then have a think about what's one thing that you might start doing this week, what's one thing you might stop doing. So, for example, it could be that you're going to start committing to some daily stress relief, some you time. Maybe you're going to be committed to reducing sugar and inflammatory foods, for example, alcohol, processed foods. Maybe you're going to start supplementing with your immune vitamins. So I'll just leave you there to have a think about that. Pop it in the app. Let us know how you're doing and what you're planning to do this week. By all means, have a chat to your coach as well. They'd love to check in with you and see how that is all going. So if you have any questions, as always, pop them in the app. Have a chat to your coach. and to the other members. And everybody stay well. And thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.